Hi everyone, I'm Brad and this is Tyler, and today we're discussing a matter concerning a halfling, a wizard, a ranger, and how they go from there and back again.
Shoot, man, you add a couple of hobbits into that group, and that's a fellowship I'd like to be a part of.
Aren't halflings hobbits?
That's what Yep.
All right, now we know Tyler has never read Lord of the Rings, and if he's watched the movies, he should be ashamed of himself.
I went off script.
Oh, blame this. Tyler, we never have scripts.
That's true, actually. Tyler, say you want to be a part of the fellowship. Okay, I will. Hobbits!
Well, it's okay because today we're discussing storytelling, and when people just do whatever they want, right?
It's true. It's true. I'll be honest, I felt a little railroaded. I'm just kidding.
You know, you kind of were because I did tell you what to say, right? Isn't that called railroading?
Maybe.
All right. Now, this is a kind of fun topic I've wanted to talk about for a while.
Yeah.
So you think about, like, in your traditional storytelling, you talk about books or other different genres of storytelling.
Yeah.
You have a couple main components to the story, right? Mm-hmm. You have your plot.
Yes.
You have a setting,
mm-hmm.
right? And you have the characters.
Yes. And
usually what makes the book happen and makes the book interesting is the conflict that can arise between any one of those three things.
Yes.
And I think in traditional storytelling, yeah, that works. It makes sense. The author's in charge of all of them.
Yes.
But D&D is a collaborative storytelling experience.
Everybody kind of has a part in that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this. I was like, what parts do the different groups in this case, the players and the DM, right? Which ones are they in charge of?
Absolutely. Let's start with the DM. Now, I like to think of the DM sometimes in an analogy as a game designer. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Now they do design the game literally, but I mean like a video game designer. You ever play those Star Wars games? Like, have you played any of the Star Wars games?
I haven't actually.
So there's like Force Unleashed and stuff where everything's kind of a tunnel. It's
right.
like the mission is, here's your new start point.
Here's the
get to this end point,
right?
And then you get to see the cool scene, the cool sequence that happens, right?
Right.
And when you're designing a dungeon or you're designing a town or you're designing an event or something, you can certainly do that. Here's their start point. This is where I expect them to end up. There are other video games where it's meant to be open world, right? So let's go ahead and say.
So I say in your examples too, right? Whether you're in the Star Wars game or the open world game, right?
Yeah.
I would put both of these things into a setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I say that's what the DM does, right? He either creates the setting in his own homebrew campaign himself,
Yep.
right? Or if he's doing a module, right? He's running the setting of the story, right? He's in charge of the setting of the story, right? PCs don't control the setting. Right, they're just there to play in the setting.
Yes. Well, and going along these same lines, here's something that's half open world, but it's not really. Mario.
Yeah.
When you're Mario, you get this big open world thing. You get to choose whatever you want, but once you choose it, you're put in a tunnel.
Right.
And so you can do that as a DM. And again, building that setting, making that decision on behalf of the entire thing can sometimes take the edge off of the idea of, oh, it's just a tunnel. It's like, well, no, you guys chose to, chase these orcs in this tunnel shaft.
So you have one way, forward or backward.
Tunnel,
your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in these story elements, right? A plot, setting, characters, conflict, right?
Yes.
The setting, all DM, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think of characters, that's all the PCs.
It's all the PCs.
All the PCs. And then another one I think maybe is somewhat controversial.
Okay.
I think maybe people say, well, of course the DM's in charge of the plot.
Right.
But I would argue to say no. I actually say the PCs are in charge of the plot.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now, how do the PCs affect the plot? Well, it actually starts with, how did you write your backstory?
I agree.
Right.
If you think about a DM creates a setting in this world, what drives the story and the plot? I mean, they can come up with all kinds of different dungeons and things that are going on, but ultimately it's up to the PCs whether they want to do it or not, right? If you're playing through a module, a lot of these modules are very open in the way PCs can tackle it. So that story, that plot that's being told is really up to the PCs in the way they do it, right?
Yes.
The setting is just there to facilitate that storytelling experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and based on what you did with the backstory, you are kind of passively creating this synergy between you and the DM of being like, oh yeah, I'm an orphan. And it's like, cool. Well, what happened to your parents? We can maybe edge that into the story.
Yeah, if you're an orphan, where did you grow up then as an orphan?
Where did you grow up? What are some cities that you know of? What are some people that you're rivals with?
Right.
Or do you have family that is out there somewhere and you just don't know? Or do you have family back home that you're going to like send notices back to from time to time because maybe some event can happen back there, right? Or whatever. Maybe that is moving into the next
into conflict. And I think you're right. So, and this is where I think that the DM really can, lend their strength, right? Where if you have the plot that's being driven by the PCs and you have the characters driven by the PCs and you created the setting, how do you tell the story now? And as the DM, it's your job to figure out, say, well, where does the conflict happen? And this could literally be an actual conflict. However, like sometimes in some of the homebrew worlds I've created, for instance, there'll be a war going on. Does that count as a conflict? Well, no.
Sure.
It's a conflict, I guess, if the PCs get involved in it, right? It becomes a literal, in a sense, conflict. But I think sometimes if you just do a generic war thrown in, that conflict's part of your setting, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But if you're the DM, you say, well, okay, here's my setting, and and how can I make the characters conflict with the setting that I've created for them in the world, right?
Absolutely.
Is there a disease going on? That's a setting issue, right? There is a conflict going on. Do the PCs get involved? Do they try and be rebels against the conflict? Do they try and maybe circumvent and destroy the leaders of the conflict so the conflict stops? They decide to fight in the war and become, war heroes in this case, right? That, those setting issues, it's up to the PCs and how they want to engage in it. And as a DM, it's your job to create that conflict for them to go have fun in.
Absolutely. Let's take an example from actually the campaign right before your campaign.
The campaign? You mean your campaign?
My campaign.
Okay, so which? Yeah, okay.
There was a really fun synergy with his character and how he played his character. There was a situation. They saved the kingdom, but it exposed an evil king.
Right.
So a group of paladins decided monarchs can't be trusted anymore, and they took the oath of the conquest. That's what it is. The oath of conquest. And they started taking over the world. Now, the rest of the party was kind of like, this seems a little too big. We're trying to gather the MacGuffins so we can stop the real end of the world.
Right.
And your player engaged in that.
Right.
And now that said, as much as he engaged, it was this really fun kind of synergy of you'd engage in something and then I was giving stuff back to you and you were going, oh, I thought this was going to kind of just turn into I roll a few dice and that's it. But we ended up doing one-on-one sessions to engage with it further. And I was actually surprised, probably as much as you were, that there was so much more to the story that we could explore. Right. I tell them about the arcane eye.
Yeah, so I mean, at one point, I decided that the problem was too big for one little gnome wizard to solve. I said, I'm going to try and create a faction to help me head up and solve this problem. Which is fun in this case, right? You as the DM created this conflict that was going on, right? And as a player, I decided to drive the plot and engage in this conflict, which led to, as you're saying too, more storytelling than we thought was probably there in the first place.
Yep.
And I think, again, lots of times as a DM, if you're feeling like, well, I think my story's getting a little boring, or maybe as a player, I feel like it's getting a little boring. Again, is that the DM's fault, or I would say I think it's sometimes the player's fault. Like, are you engaging enough in the setting in the world to create a conflict or create something that can help drive a story in that case?
Yeah.
I think oftentimes it comes up, right? If you as a DM try to drive that plot too much, people might say, come back and say, well, it feels like a railroad.
Right.
And I guess in a way, at a high level view, I say, yeah, that probably is what's happening when you are railroading your players, is you are driving the plot and not letting the players drive the plot.
So what was neat, and this is something that you should absolutely try with your DM, or if you're a DM, try it with your PCs. He wanted to create this faction, and I said yes. And as he started to create the faction, I just tried to spin out scenarios for the faction. So it was like, this group of the faction aren't getting along. What do you want to do? And he got to engage as much as he wanted and say, I think they should solve it like this. We should solve it like this. Let's do recruiting like this. And then he'd move on. And then when he came back, based off of his own roles, those would progress or deter. And they actually did a really good job of kind of stalling these paladins from taking over
For a
the
while.
last couple of countries until it
Until
was
I had to get back into the other pod, the rest of the party, and I had to walk away.
Yeah, you went in for like 12 weeks into a demi-plane, so it was like,
Yeah, that was fun. Although that was fun, but it did not work necessarily in my favor.
Right.
But again, too, as a DM, though, that was your choice, right? To say, how do I want to create this conflict, to keep the conflict going? And so, again, I kind of come back to, it's kind of, I think, this where things that, again, I think lots of people will say, well, of course the DM controls the plot. And I guess my main argument is, no, they don't. The PCs do.
Yep.
And it's the DM's job to come up with those conflicts that the PCs can choose to engage in.
Yeah, when you're a first-time DM, you probably make one of two decisions, or one of two mistakes. You either prepare too much or you prepare too little.
Right.
The good DM is built off of the backs of good PCs.
I would agree.
A good DM is actually the DM who prepares enough to give their PCs lots of choices and then rolls with what the PCs choose. So again, if you're a PC watching this video, you're a player watching this video thinking, oh, this is a DM video. It's not.
I guess it's to both of you, but again, too, if you're the PC and you're saying, well, I think my game is, let's say you're playing a homebrew campaign with your DM and say, I feel like it's kind of boring. Again, I kick it back to you and say, well, what can you do to go engage in that more? What can you do to drive the plot? If like lots of sessions you're sitting back there, you're not doing too much, right? Is that a DM problem, or is that a you problem, right? Is there more that you can do with your story,
right?
And again, this lends to a lot of things, because again, D&D is a collaborative storytelling sport. Yes. It's not all on the player. It's not all on the DM.
Absolutely.
And again, I've seen lots. I've read lots of things that talk about how with DMs and how all the things they need to do with these different elements of the story. I think we've all kind of heard it somewhere or another sometimes, right? Where we say, as the DM, like, if you want to control the characters and the story, then just go write a book and not DM, right? But again, too, I think we play D&D because of the openness and the randomness and the crazy things that can happen at the table that we weren't expecting, or you're not expecting. And that, again, that lends to even how I DM lots of times too, is I'll create problems. I will create conflicts. I won't know how they resolve, and I don't try and plan or figure out how it should resolve.
Right.
I just throw it at the PCs and let them, and let's see what happens.
Which is fun and empowering. And as the PC, you're probably making one of two errors in your campaign. You're probably preparing too much in that, I know exactly how my PC will engage in any situation, so the DM has to come up with my secret code word, and then I'll engage in the story.
Right.
Or, again, too little, where it's just like, why are we stopping again? The job is to go get the MacGuffin, right? And here's the thing, if you focus on all the side quests, or if you make the side quest your main quest kind of thing, that can become like really fun, but also kind of finding that balance of not always only pursuing the main quest, to be able to give other party members those times to shine and to make sure that everybody's collaborating in that story also.
Right. Every PC brings their own elements of that character they created to the story, and it's up to you as the PCs to figure out how to want to engage those elements into the game. And not to say I feel like you should, as a PC, write a backstory that could be essentially its own adventure and its own campaign, right? Keep some of those things and elements open enough, but create enough there, though, that you can engage and bring it into the game itself and explore those avenues and things of your character. And I agree with you too. Don't pigeonhole yourself so much as a character that you only engage in certain ways if, as you said, the keyword or certain things happen just one way.
Yep.
I mean, any cool story that we say, whether it's a movie or a book, right? One of the things that makes us like the characters that we're watching or reading about is the fact that how they change and how they grow.
Sure.
And are you letting your own character do that too with the way the plot goes? And again, you're bringing those other people to the table too, and how do they influence and affect your character and how that he grows and how he changes? And when you get all those elements together, again, I would say it's not an easy thing, right?
Yeah.
But when we get this cool harmony of these four elements and they're working together, you get really awesome magic in a campaign.
Absolutely. And find ways to build your character so that you say yes to scenarios. Now, the most basic scenario is that you're in a group. And sometimes we make the mistake of building our character in such a way that why would they ever be in a group, right?
Right.
But that can make such a huge difference to just be like, yeah, I need to be part of a group. I want to be part of a group. I understand and accept that adventuring is dangerous, and my character always keeps repeating, stick together
until it decides to separate.
until we need to, or whatever.
And then as a DM too, if you're looking to spice up your campaign or add more to it, right? Examine your characters in the party, examine the setting you've created or that you're playing in. And look at those, and look at what the story they're driving, and see how do those three elements conflict? What sort of conflict or it can be present in there that you can then drive the story off of? How can you keep things moving off of? Again, I think that's your job as the DM. Yeah. And to kind of help keep things going with that too.
Yeah, talking about the Venn diagram of plot, conflict, setting, characters, absolutely everything revolves around the conflict, right? And that's meant to be that way. Are there ways that the characters can interact with the setting? Like, absolutely.
Sure.
Literally, you decide where to go.
Do we go to city A, city B? Do we explore dungeon A? Do we decide to go to the forest, right?
Right.
And then again, with the plot too, it's, maybe there's a character that has a dark past in history. Do you as a group, as a character, decide to engage in that dark past?
Yes.
Again, there's all different ways that this can happen. And as a DM, you can, lay those breadcrumbs to lead people places, but ultimately it's up to you as a party to decide where to go and do it.
Yeah. And I'd say where we find dysfunction or where you might run into a campaign, you've mentioned boring a few times, but let's say a campaign where the PCs have ADD or a campaign where the DM is railroading. Both of those scenarios just sounds like this Venn diagram. Some things aren't touching. The characters aren't touching the plot.
Right.
The characters are overwhelming the setting.
Or they're not engaging the setting enough, or they're not driving enough of the plot, or there is just no clear conflict.
There's no clear conflict
that they're driving into.
Yep.
And so again, with the collaborative storytelling, right? Each group is in charge of two of the four elements. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
Dude, we are Motley Mimic. Thanks for hanging out with us. Mention in the comments some good storytelling tips or what you love or hate about your current campaign. Like, subscribe, and share this video.
You get bonus XP for it. Trust us.
If you are level 20, stop taking bonus XP and roll a new character.
All right, guys. We'll catch you later. Thank you. See you next time. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Give us a like and a subscribe. Help us out with that algorithm, and we'll appreciate it. What you doing, Tyler?
I'm hacking the algorithm.
Nice.
Oh, whoops. Punk.